Good evening, I'm Linden MacIntyre. Welcome to the Fifth Estate. There's a new curse in town. Your town, maybe, a new drug of choice. It's an addiction that's eating up Canadian lives. It's shockingly easy to come by, and it gets worse. The drugs involved are all perfectly legal. A class of narcotics called opioids. They're time-release prescription painkillers, and on the street, users know how to break them down for a lightning-fast high.
To do this pill is bliss. It is absolutely bliss.
And viciously addictive. Now Canadian addicts are invading hospitals, assaulting doctors, ready to do just about anything for that next fix.
I have one friend that got her boyfriend to break his hand just to get a prescription.
He broke his hand in order to get painkillers.
Yep.
This Made in America epidemic has spread into Canada, and now it seems we're returning the favor by becoming a major supplier.
The quantity is just enormous. I've seen it. I know it's coming from Canada. I know everybody's getting it from Canada.
Because it first caught on in the kind of American backwoods where moonshine used to be the quickest trip to oblivion, it picked up the nickname Hillbilly Heroin. But that doesn't do it justice. First, unlike heroin or cocaine, it doesn't have to be smuggled over from Asia or flown in from Colombia. It's licensed and sold legally right here in Canada. Second, forget the backwoods or the ghetto. This plague is eating up lives in the best of homes. When we went looking in a picture book corner of Canada, we found a thriving trade and a supply network so well established that it is defying the best efforts of law enforcement. And then we went looking for someone to take responsibility. Calais, Maine, an American town that's almost in Canada. And if you took away the flags, almost Canadian, or at least the way we like to think of being Canadian. Not as prosperous as much of North America, but peaceful, orderly, and safe. But now, a plague is creeping up America's east coast along the spine of Appalachia, and it's devastating quiet towns like Calais.
To do this pill is bliss. It is absolutely bliss.
Part of the bliss comes from knowing that he's using a legal drug manufactured in a government-approved lab, dispensed by a licensed pharmacy. Narcotic painkillers, a comfort to people with serious pain, a curse in a community like Calais, where they've become the junkie's choice. Ground up and shot up, a painkiller like Dilaudid can give a better high than heroin. 1996, the first year OxyContin was available in the U.S., sales there totaled $55 million. Last year they grossed more than $1 billion. In Maine, they now need a special court for addicts.
Please be seated.
Most of whom are hooked on prescription painkillers. Judge John Romay.
Good morning. This is the Calais Drug Treatment Court. First on the docket today is Marnie Taylor. Not only did you have a dirty test for opiates, what was the opiate?
OxyContin.
If you want to stay in drug court, you're going to have to detox. And the only way that I can be sure that you're detoxed is if you go to jail for a substantial period of time and that you test it every day in jail.
I think people are becoming aware that we have an epidemic problem in rural Maine with prescription narcotic addiction.
Epidemic, that's a big word.
Well, 5 years ago, our jail was taking in boarders. We were about half full, and now we're 40 or 50% over capacity. The difference can all be attributed to prescription narcotics.
Comforting assumptions are breaking down. That small towns and rural byways are intrinsically safe places to raise families, that addiction is an urban ghetto problem. That's what Hal Carter's parents used to think. Then they discovered he was abusing OxyContin, hooked on more than the dosage usually reserved for the most extreme pain imaginable.
Without oxys, I was incapable of doing anything at all. I couldn't even get out of bed, couldn't think, just couldn't function. You know, I was probably doing twice the dosage of a major cancer patient. At my height, I was probably up to just the bare minimum would probably be 3 to 4 oxy 80s a day, just to get by.
And you were what age?
At the height, when I was at my worst, 17, going on 18.
And at the age of 19, you're burned out.
Yeah.
His story is fairly typical. Above-average student from a middle-class family, gifted athlete, fooling around with drugs, almost immediately addicted to painkillers, eventually struggling with a habit that nearly destroyed him. Then during one $600 drug binge, the wake-up call.
I went to the bathroom for a minute. I started dry heaving, and suddenly blood just started gushing out of my nose. And the sad thing was, I was trying not to lose any of my blood because
it was full of dope.
It was, yeah, it was coming back out of my nose, and I could see the powder and chalk all in it too. So I was trying to keep it, and that was making me vomit, and you know, because I was trying to actually eat it, and you know,
Eat your own blood.
Yeah.
The pain industry.
Mary Carter is his mother. When Hal realized that his addiction was destroying her too, he went cold turkey.
He did not want to do any more drugs. He came down over the stairs, very emotional, and said, "I need some help." And Hal went back up to his room, and that's where he did his detoxing in his own bedroom.
All by himself?
All by himself. With his mom and dad standing there watching him shake, vomiting, diarrhea, not able to eat a thing.
Hal looks a keen-looking little fella.
Hal was the youngest of the Carter children. After weeks breaking the physical addiction, he started the long struggle for psychological control. The family thought they'd survived the crisis, but there was already another in the making, one that Hal has trouble acknowledging because he blames himself for starting it when he was still a junkie.
You weren't the only member of the family that had a problem like this. I mean, I wonder, did your problem infect somebody else, or is it a totally different situation?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to talk about that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I won't talk about that.
His sister Carrie was depressed over boyfriend troubles. When she asked Hal to help her get some drugs to make her happy again, he was happy to oblige. She became addicted even more quickly than he did.
She was shooting up.
The needle.
The needle. Booting up. You know, she would tell these stories of, well, I was with somebody that booted up the other night. And you'd get this sickness in your stomach and think, oh my God, is she telling me that she is doing this? And you would ask her and she'd deny it. Until one day she sat at the table and looked me right in the eye and said, I'm shooting up.
Carrie Carter.
Then it was petty crime to support the habit, and then drug court.
Carrie, you've been in the program 9 days, and you got off to a great start. You've been clean. What are your impressions about the drug court?
I like it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
I want to get off drugs, but there's a part of me, I love it. I love it. I love the feeling. And the fact, me thinking that I'm never going to do another drug in my life, you know, kind of makes me a little sad, you know. I'm still young and I still want to party and stuff like that.
It might start with parties and feeling high, but it soon becomes a solitary struggle to feel normal. When the pill breaks down, the chemistry breaks down too, releasing enough narcotic to last for hours in one electrifying surge.
Am I in control of this habit? Absolutely not. There's no such thing as an addict in control. I was middle class, Had a wonderful job, low to mid $40,000 a year income. I was married, had a house, new car. I was middle class and normal. This is what it's all about after you get addicted. You do it not by choice, it's a necessity. It's sick.
Since the start of last year, nearly 800 people in the U.S. have died from overdosing on popular narcotic painkillers. The problem has been particularly bad in the Appalachian region, from Georgia to Maine, afflicting rural communities the way crack hit the city streets and alleyways.
There really isn't a neighborhood that I could take you to and with any degree of certainty say that this area is untouched by a drug problem.
Lieutenant Mike Riggs of the Washington County, Maine Sheriff's Department says prescription drug abuse has grown so quickly, lawmen like him may never catch up.
So it's not a matter of taking us to the druggy neighborhood, it's a matter of not being able to find one that isn't.
Pretty much, that's right.
Getting the drugs is limited only by the creativity of the addict.
Any way that you can imagine to get a pill, they've come up with it. They're diverted from their inception at every step of the way. Old people supplementing their income. People who have obtained it fraudulently with a false ailment. People that work in pharmacies, smuggling it out. People stealing it from people who legitimately need it.
It's a policeman's nightmare. There seems to be no central supply system, but rather a broadly based culture in which an incalculable number of addicts sell legal drugs to each other. Street prices now run at about $1 a milligram, and a serious addict might need 400 milligrams a day just to feel okay.
OxyContin.
That's right. And that's Dilaudid.
That's Dilaudid.
If you can see somebody selling a pill half the size of a pencil eraser, you've got good eyes. You need to come to work for us. Because what you're going to see is the palm of a hand or something like that. A dog can't smell it. If you want to hide it, you put it in a piece of bubble gum, throw it in your ashtray. Nobody will ever look there, and it'll stay there for as long as you want it to.
So how do you do it? How do you catch them?
If I tell you the two secrets that I have, I won't get them that I do get.
When we come back, Addicts Without Borders.
Is it over here?
It is over here. I cannot. There wouldn't be a problem over there if it wasn't for us.
St. Stephen has a special place in New Brunswick's Loyalist history, settled by people who didn't want to live in the new American Republic, but who didn't want to live too far away from it either. The town sits on the Maine New Brunswick border. A river and a flag are all that distinguish St. Stephen from her American sister.
Calais and St. Stephen are practically mirror images of each other. They share history and tradition. The daily lives of the two communities are inextricably interlaced in all respects, it seems, but one. People in Calais are dealing with a plague, what they call an epidemic in prescription drug abuse. A lot of people in St. Stephen would like to think that somehow the plague has been confined to over there.
But lately, there have been some rude reminders that addiction doesn't recognize the border. Reminders that it can drive ordinary people to acts of desperation, even here. Wade Cook has been an addict since he was about 19, most recently hooked on Dilaudid. But he had never had a serious run-in with the law until one night in May 1995, when he showed up here in St. Stephen with a gun, demanding pills. 6 years later, on a Friday night in July this year, undeterred by a prison term for his last escapade here, he showed up again.
I went in for medical attention. I went and I talked to the doctor. He said, I'm not going to do nothing for you. I was in so much pain, so much aggravation. I mean, and I just, well, see what I can do for myself. I wasn't even really thinking clear, but you know, if I'm not going to get any help, I'll get help for myself one way or the other, eh?
When it became obvious hospital staff were ignoring him, he ran past them and locked himself inside the narcotic medication room. The nurse could hear him rummaging for pills as she called police.
38450.
R38, go ahead.
Charlotte County Hospital called advising they may have a problem with the patient.
St. Stephen police officer Hal Dewright took the call and headed for the hospital.
We opened the door cautiously. He braced his foot against it, and reaching out with his fist and encased in it was a needle, swinging his arm through the crack of the door.
The policeman overpowered him, but it seems not before he got his fix, a moment of bliss that will cost him 18 drug-free months in jail. This is what he was after, Dilaudid, a narcotic painkiller that has been around for decades. Like OxyContin, when it's broken down and injected or snorted, it provides a powerful and addictive high. It has become the needle junkie's choice in New Brunswick, where its street price is half that of heroin. For nearly half his life, he's been an addict. Half a lifetime sounds like a long time, but Wade Cook is only 35 years old. For now, Dilaudid is the next best thing to heroin.
Well, I was just shooting Dilaudid. You might as well be shooting heroin. It's the closest you're going to get. The thing of it is heroin's harder to get. It's easier to come up with the OxyContin or the Dilaudid.
What does easy mean?
Easy means if you can't get it from a doctor, you can go get it off the street anywhere. It wouldn't have to be St. Stephen or St. John, what city, what town, or whatever. If I was there in an hour, I could find whatever I want to find, put it that way.
I know that OxyContin has been called hillbilly heroin in the States.
Hillbilly heroin, I don't know, I've never heard it called that before. I'm not going to play totally stupid with it. Yeah, I know it is a big thing. Oh yeah, they love it. They literally slice somebody's throat for it. I know that for a fact too.
Increasingly, local doctors are displaying signs like this one in their offices, hoping to deter desperate drug addicts. Dr. Ronaldo Robes was on duty the night Wade Cook raided his hospital dispensary. He's grown accustomed to aggressive demands for drugs, and he always feels the same when it happens.
I was scared, very scared.
This is just not something that they taught you about?
No, they didn't. I never learned about this in the medical school.
So what happens when you say no?
They can punch you. They can hit you in the face, yeah.
You have felt physically threatened?
Yeah, many times. They're becoming more and more violent. We have to be very careful with writing this prescription, because if you don't need it, I'm destroying you.
Most New Brunswickers seem oblivious to the drug problem, but for frontline health workers and policemen, it's getting harder to ignore.
I've had numerous calls where people have found syringes from shooting up the drug in local establishments. They come and go into the washrooms and shoot up the drug, leave their stuff there, and go. All of a sudden, we get this whole different drug scenario now. Now we're into harder drugs, vastly more addictive drugs, and this is going to be a major concern to the health system and to the young kids growing up, doing that initial experimentation. Because it doesn't take much. It's a small step from experimenting with hard drugs to addiction.
In small-town Canada, young people seem drawn irresistibly to experimentation to escape family stress or just plain boredom.
You never thought of going back like full-time?
Sherry Kennedy is 18, and she's already done jail time for using and trafficking in prescription drugs.
I've thought about going to Ontario just because nobody knows me, and it's an easier start. And it started for me when I was 11 with pot and me running away from home, and the pot led to acid, the acid led to crack. It just kept stepping up, and it's scary. First time I popped a pill, I was 13.
13?
Yeah.
And how old were you when you got hooked on those pills?
16.
16 years
Yeah.
old. Now, how did you end up breaking this habit?
Went to jail. I was headed nowhere. Like 80 pounds, 18 years old, that's not healthy at all.
You were a needle user.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty rough world for, and if you'll pardon me saying it, a little girl to find herself in.
But it happens every day.
Are there a lot of little girls out there?
Oh God, yeah. When you drive down through town of St. Stephen, 9 chances out of 10 people are looking for a way to get high. If they aren't already high, they're looking for a way to make money to go get high. And I mean, a lot of kids won't change because it's just so easy to get it, because every corner, like, you know what I mean, there's a little house sitting there that sells dope or sells Dilaudid or...
In St. Stephen, we're talking to people and they look across the river and they say they got a big problem over there in Calais. Is it over here?
It is over here. There wouldn't be a problem over there if it wasn't for us, because they wouldn't get it over there.
Jennifer Bradford is Sherry Kennedy's best friend. She's another addict and was recently arrested in the U.S. and charged with selling prescription drugs.
They arrested you for trafficking?
Yeah.
Who would you sell to?
70% were Americans. A lot of them were Americans. They would come over. Like, I wouldn't cross over to get them, to give them to them, but they would come over to get them.
When we come back, 2 border towns, 1 big problem.
60 to 75% of the prescription drugs that we're dealing with on the street here in Washington County are coming from New Brunswick.
These days, terrorism preoccupies Canadian and American border officials, but cops on both sides have been alarmed for some time by how easy it is to get drugs across. The illegal traffic in prescription painkillers seems, in terms of the criminal drug trade, to be in its infancy. There is no cartel, no large criminal network. The way the police describe it, it's a simple matter of diversion, diverting legally prescribed drugs to people who just want to get high. And sometimes it's as simple as scamming a doctor with phony symptoms or a pharmacist with a fake prescription. And sometimes it's a simple matter of priorities. People with real pain and a real prescription selling their pills so that they can eat or dress a little better or drive a better car. But one thing that both addicts and cops agree on, a lot of the pills in Washington County, Maine, are coming across from Canada. When American Hal Carter was hooked on prescription drugs, the nearness of St. Stephen was like a godsend. Fewer cops, almost no awareness of drug problems. His Yankee dollars went a lot further there than in Calais, and the availability of drugs never seemed to be a problem.
I had met someone from St. Stephen, Canada, who was selling, and within minutes, I was getting drugs, and on a regular basis, I was trafficking across the border every day.
Dilaudid, OxyContin, no problem.
No problem.
Where is it coming from?
They don't tell their sources. I show up at their house, and they've got, just like bags of Dilaudid, 5,000, 10,000, one in a giant Ziploc bag. The quantity is just enormous. I've seen it. I know it's coming from Canada. I know everybody's getting it from Canada.
For Mike Riggs of the Washington County Sheriff's Department, the border that means nothing to addicts like Hal Carter is an impenetrable wall.
The ability for me to slide across the border to surveil somebody and know that he went to a dealer's house and come back is not going to happen because I can't get across the border. If a dealer got 4 or 5 cars ahead of you, that's a long time. By the time you pass through customs, they're gone. Another issue is firearms. We're not allowed to work over here without our firearms, but we can't take them to Canada either. It's very easy for the users and dealers to get back and forth across, and they do it very successfully every day, sometimes several times a day. But it's very difficult for law enforcement to do the same thing.
Occasionally they get lucky. Hal Dewright of the St. Stephen Police.
A couple of young persons were apprehended. They indicated that they had crossed several times during the day here at this point. They come over specifically for acquiring dilaudid. And it seems to be a common thing to come over here and get the dilaudid, shoot it up here, and then go back. That way they're not faced with a seizure or arrest when they go back through U.S. port of entry.
Unfortunately, the Canadian factor as far as a source for these drugs is significant. 60 to 75% of the prescription pills that we're dealing with on the streets of Washington County are probably coming from New Brunswick.
Coming across the river?
Yes.
I think the one...
Darrell Crandall is with Maine's State Drug Enforcement Agency.
It's more difficult to deal with this kind of drug, I gather, than it is to deal with the straightforward criminalized drugs.
Sure it is. You've got an issue of something that is in its form that it comes in. If it's possessed the way it's supposed to be, it's legal. These are commercially manufactured items that have a very valid purpose, if used correctly.
We've spoken to people who've used a lot of this. It's so easy to get it that I can't help thinking there has to be some kind of a criminal hierarchy.
For the most part, we're not seeing the criminal hierarchy here that we see with other drugs. And what we've got here is a very significant network of user dealers. You've got, almost without exception, the traffickers are people that are trafficking to support their own horrible habits.
Cops in the U.S. got a rare break last August when they nabbed a teenager on a railway trestle as he was crossing back into the U.S. with a supply of narcotic pills from Canada. He identified his supplier as an addict who lives here on the edge of St. Stephen, safely beyond the reach of the American police. The alleged pusher is Bob Grace.
Hi, Bob. Hi, my name is Linden. Talking to some kids about pills, and you got a hold of this. There's a document over in the States with your name on it.
Yeah.
Can I show it to you?
Sure.
Says that Bob Grace sells pills.
Where does it say that?
Huh?
Bobby Grace seems more of a victim of drugs than someone profiting from them, but in the pathetic world of prescription drug abuse, it's hard to tell the addicts from the pushers.
They say you're a dope dealer.
I'm not a dope dealer. I do dope. Like, I got a problem.
A lot of people who have the habit as bad as you clearly have it just have to support it by selling some of their own stuff, right?
Well, no, I get a check every month. Plus I do under the table work. I don't really do as much as, you'd think I do, but once it's got you, it's got, it got you by the balls.
Kid gets picked up on the trestle.
Yeah.
And right here he says he went to Bob's house where he purchased 143 K8 dilaudid pills, paid $20 a pill, paid you $2,000, and he owed you money because he'd been coming here for a couple of years, he says.
Yeah.
So, where's he coming from?
I don't, that's bullshit about me selling stuff,
And where do you have to go and get your fix?
Sometimes, sometimes friends, have a prescription of them or something lesser, there's Oxycontins and stuff like that, and I'll have to settle for that.
It sounds to me like there's just a whole bunch of little grannies and people with pains in their back and they peddle part of their...
Yeah, well, obviously, there's people that, get their prescription stuff, and, obviously a big pile of pills like that for $2,000 American. Glad to can't go without their painkillers for that kind of money.
You can't keep doing this indefinitely. You're going to be in a big hole in the ground one of these days.
As we spoke, it became increasingly clear that Bobby Grace, allegedly a major drug dealer, was sick and broke, and also in the early stages of withdrawal.
Like, right now, I got, I haven't done anything since yesterday. And, withdrawals are already starting to kick in and stuff. And, I just, weigh my options. I just die.
Sherry Kennedy, former prescription drug addict and dealer.
If you're getting a prescription for $7, but yet you can sell a pill for $40 Canadian, or you go to Machias and you can sell a pill for $50 American, I mean, you're gonna do it. You're gonna. If you can make that much money off of it, you're gonna do it. Some people will do stuff to themselves just so they can get a prescription to either deal or have for personal use. It just...
Like what? What would they do with it? What do you know that somebody did?
I have one friend that got her boyfriend to break his hand just to get a prescription of Dilaudid.
He broke his hand in order to get painkillers.
Yep.
How addicts get their pills may be mysterious, but there is no mystery about where the pills come from. Every single pill passes through a pharmacy, and pharmacists know a lot of them are getting into the hands and arms of addicts. Valerie McDonald sees the problem growing from her pharmacy window in St. Stephen.
It started to become an obvious problem when you saw kids hanging out in the parking lot selling pills.
What about across the counter? Are you able to see on a daily basis what this problem looks like?
It becomes evident when you get people who you don't know, they're not from this community, and they're coming with prescriptions from doctors not from this community for medications that are subject to abuse like narcotics.
When we come back, Canadian pharmacists face the plague alone. OxyContin, phenomenally successful in the US, is also enjoying rocketing popularity in Canada. In 1996, the first year it was available here, doctors wrote fewer than 600 prescriptions for it. Last year they wrote more than 126,000, which is still a fraction of the nearly 6 million OxyContin prescriptions American doctors wrote last year.
Now we're here not because we think Howland, Penobscot Valley has a major problem with these drugs. In fact, we're hoping very much that you don't.
When Jay McCloskey was a prosecutor in Maine, he was known for his hard line on prescription drug abuse. So the company that makes it, Purdue Pharma, now facing at least 13 class action lawsuits, hired McCloskey to speak for them.
Do you get any sense within the corporation that maybe they created a little monster here?
No, I think not in.
That there can be too much of a good thing.
No, I don't think so, because I think you have to look at it from their perspective, and what you're not seeing is the thousands and thousands of people who have been literally saved by this drug, OxyContin. You know, Purdue Pharma doesn't tell you to crush and snort OxyContin when the doctor prescribes it to you.
Purdue Pharma believes it's up to doctors to be more careful about who gets painkillers like OxyContin.
Doctors have known from the beginning that narcotic medication can lead to addiction. We had found instances when doctors were handing out prescription narcotics like candy. It doesn't take many of those doctors to addict a population in an area, and once you get an opiate population, it will grow year after year.
Is that enough to go around hassling the doctors?
Well, obviously, you know, doctors are trying to treat as many patients as they can, but ultimately they have to realize that the medical problems that come with an opiate addiction are going to swamp them sooner or later if they don't properly assess and treat pain.
Doctors like Rinaldo Robes say they're in a bind. They can't be cops. Skepticism doesn't sit comfortably alongside compassion, and when they must choose between the two, they have to give the benefit of doubt to someone who appears to be in pain.
I've been trying my best to identify which one really needs it and which one won't. If you have cancer, you know, there's no doubt about it. And if you have cancer pain, then that's it, you're gonna need it, yeah. But again, it's very hard. It's a very hard thing to determine.
Which leaves the pharmacist, people like Valerie McDonald, to spot the bogus prescriptions and the junkies.
There's lack of communication both directions, like from the stores to the doctors, from the doctors to the stores. So it's there's a lot of holes there that get taken advantage of.
And little pills fall out through little holes.
When she was just starting out, it wasn't such a problem. There was a federal agency called the Bureau of Dangerous Drugs, They monitored narcotic pain prescriptions, looking over the shoulders of both doctors and pharmacists, actively looking for abuse. But that program doesn't exist anymore.
That whole program was discontinued by the federal government. I think it's very short-sighted, and now it's starting to really become apparent that we needed somebody like that.
The closest you can get to somebody like that today is here in Moncton.
Good morning, the Brunswick Pharmaceutical Society.
For better or for worse, the job of policing pharmacies and the drugs they sell falls to Bill Vigneault, the registrar for the New Brunswick Pharmaceutical Society, and it's clearly more than he can handle on his own.
When I came here 5 years ago, the calls I received about Dilaudid and OxyContin products were minimal. Today, I receive many more calls, probably 10 to 15 times as many calls about concerned pharmacists about certain clients. We have seen triple the amount of hydromorphone dispensed in the province since 1996, between 96 and 2001.
The Dilaudid.
The Dilaudid, that's right.
Triple?
It's tripled.
300%.
300%. The amount of prescriptions dispensed.
But they're leaking out of the pipeline. They're falling out onto the street somewhere.
That's right.
And we've been studying the problem, trying to find out who's accountable, and the buck stops right on your desk.
There's no question. We're on the front line. We're the ones handing that medication out in many cases. I don't believe in all cases, but in many cases we are.
But let's look at what you can do. What can you do right now?
I think we can set up a monitoring program, something electronic. That's a program where it allows the pharmacist to make decisions up front about whether or not they're going to fill a prescription based on the history they see in front of them.
Are you trying hard enough, though, Mr. Vigneault?
Well, I like to believe we are. What we need is a tool to really pin it down.
You know what? Some people might say that tool is called a great big computer.
I agree.
With a little line going into every pharmacy.
Yeah, I agree.
What's stopping you?
Funding would be one thing. I've got a small organization here. We're 560-some pharmacists and 165 stores. We run on a pretty small budget, and we need some help in order to do that.
7 years ago, when the federal government stopped monitoring the prescription of narcotic painkillers, a liberalized philosophy of pain management was gaining momentum in the medical profession, a momentum that was encouraged and applauded by drug manufacturers. Since then, there has been an explosion in the use and abuse of highly addictive medications. Whatever the taxpayers may have saved in dollars and cents by eliminating the program, the human consequences of the cutback may be incalculable. And if anybody doubts it, just look next door in Maine.
Carrie Carter's attempt to escape her addiction was short-lived. After only a couple of weeks clean, she went AWOL, forged checks, and stole from her parents for prescription drugs. They had her arrested. Now she's in jail and mad at everybody.
They won't accept my calls. I've had no contact with them for going on a month. And they've pressed charges against me 4 times in a row because I've stolen from them. Which I don't blame them, but I mean, I'm their daughter and they're giving me a felony record now, and I don't know. I don't think it's right. It's not right what I did to them, but I don't think they should have, I don't know, handled in that way.
The last straw was when she stole the family Bible and sold it for $35 to buy 1 pill.
I feel safe with her in jail. If she's out, I don't know where she is. I don't know what she's doing. And I have this fear that I am going to hear a call from the policeman telling me that she's dead. And I just want to hold her and make everything right. And I can't because she has to do it herself. And Hal has taught us that. Because if you don't do it yourself, it can't be done. Because I can't do it, you can't do it. Nobody can do it except themselves.
Carrie's brother has just marked a crucial milestone, 1 full year drug-free. But at the age of 19, Hal Carter must come to terms with the fact that for the rest of his life he will be locked in a desperate struggle with himself.
There's no way out of it. If I even use one prescription drug, it may be my last. It could put me in a relapse that could eventually end my life. It'll never be over till I grow old and die. There's probably 500 or 600 drug addicts just in this community alone now.
Wow.
I mean, that's what you got to deal with.
500 or 600 drug addicts.
Yeah, even if you stop it totally right now.
What about St. Stephen?
If you live in Calais, St. Stephen is pretty much just an extension of the town. It's just a border. I mean, you don't think of it as anything. And whatever happens here happens there. It ain't gonna get any better unless the whole community steps up. I don't see it getting better in the near future at all. It's a pretty grim situation.